Hi everyone, welcome back. We're going to start in on the lymphatic system. So this is going to be one of our shorter chapters, so yay that. All right, so let's get started. So let's talk about the functions of the lymphatic system. Now mind you, we've already taken a look at it a little bit when we talked about blood vessels. So if you remember back, we talked about how fluid leaks out of blood vessels, and then it's going to be the job of the lymphatic capillaries to return a little bit of that fluid back into circulation. And when that doesn't happen, that's when we get edema and that pitting edema. So we have that it drains that excess interstitial fluid from the plasma proteins from those tissue spaces. So that's what that bullet point is saying. Certain things from our digestive tract are actually too large size-wise, molecule-wise, to enter our bloodstream directly. So what's going to happen is that the lymphatic system will take these in, so these kind of dietary lipids and fat-soluble vitamins, and take them in and then return them to our bloodstream. But they don't go directly from it into blood vessels, but rather into the lymphatic system. And then the lymphatic system is going to drain into very large blood vessels where they then can enter into our circulation. And by the way, this is one of the reasons, like sort of this mechanism where the lymphatic system can take in like larger molecules and substances versus our tiny little capillaries. That's one of the reasons why cancer spreads through the lymphatic system, because those cancerous cells tend to be fairly large, and so they can't get directly into our bloodstream, but they can travel to different organs via the lymphatic system. Which is why often, like, if you have like a certain cancer, they'll also take out the lymph nodes and lymph vessels near it, in case the cancer is stuck somewhere in the lymphatic organ, so it doesn't actually spread to yet another organ and kind of catch it before it gets anywhere else. And we'll see that the lymphatic system is also going to facilitate some immune responses. So what this will mean is that we have some of those white blood cells living particularly in our lymph nodes. And we'll get to that. I'll kind of explain that in a bit and how all that works. Oh, and let me hide me so you can see this better. So basically with the immune system, again, in the lymph nodes, as the fluid is traveling through the lymph nodes, we're going to have those white blood cells that will recognize microbes and even cancerous tissue, and hopefully they will respond by killing them or producing antibodies to help kill off whatever the infection is. Okay, but again, I'll talk a little more about that in a few slides. Come on, computer. Sorry, guys. Sometimes this computer does not want to help me advance slides. All right. So everything in this image that you're seeing in green is part of the lymphatic system. So what you're seeing here, right, you kind of see these two different color areas. So you have sort of this, I don't know, beigey yellow. So those are the areas that are being drained by something called the right lymphatic duct. And then this area is actually drained by something called the thoracic duct. So you're seeing here these sort of green vessels. Those would be the lymphatic capillaries, the lymphatic vessels. And then you'll notice that they're coming from the extremities, and there are these little lymph nodes at different parts along the way. And as we'll see, these lymph nodes will have some of those white blood cells. So as, let's say, I don't know, you have something going on here, like an infection or something that because of, I don't know, a cut to a leg, that will travel via the lymphatic system, and then, that infection will travel. And basically in that lymph node will be the white blood cells that'll go like, hey, wait a second, I see, there's bacteria, there's a virus, there's something that should not be there, and then that will start the immune response. Okay, but with that, so our lymphatic system is basically the organs, vessels, and fluid. That fluid is actually called lymph, right? That's what it's called. That lymph is very similar to interstitial fluid, because basically that's what these vessels are taken up, so it's very similar. And then the actual organs that are involved in our lymphatic system are bone marrow. You can see that in this image here. The thymus, right here, sort of right above the heart. Your spleen, and all the little lymph nodes we talked about. And then you have what are known as diffuse lymphatic tissue. So these are tonsils, right? The adenoids, as well as Peyer's patches. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about these. What separates these diffuse lymphatic tissue from these other ones, from the red bone marrow, thymus, spleen, and lymph nodes, is that the diffuse lymphatic tissue do not have a capsule around them. That's why they're diffuse. So there isn't like I guess I don't know how to describe it. It's more a collection of cells working together versus something that has a connective tissue wrapping around it. So basically there's no connective tissue around the diffuse lymphatic tissue. So let's just take a quick look at these lymphatic vessels and how the circulation actually works. So in this image, you can see here fairly clearly, you've got your venule, you've got your arterial, and here's our capillary bed. Here are all the cells that the capillary is feeding. And again, there's that interstitial space, there's some fluid in there, and then these capillaries will take up, that fluid and return it back into the bloodstream later on. Okay, so the capillaries begin, and unlike our blood vessels, they begin as closed-ended tubes. So basically, they end. Unlike our capillaries, unlike our blood vessels that are constantly connected to one another, there's no end to them. Capillaries actually do have an end, or maybe a beginning. So basically, capillaries, very similar to veins work. They'll go from the size of capillaries, and then they'll merge to form vessels. Okay, and these vessels will look like veins, and they'll have thin walls and a lot of valves. Okay, because remember, your heart is not pumping the lymphatic fluid. Basically, it's going to get pumped by your muscles contracting, kind of that milking action, and then also that breathing behavior, the respiratory pump that we had talked about with blood vessels. That's what's drawing the lymphatic fluid through the lymph vessels. So it's going to have a lot more valves in it to make sure that you don't have that backflow of lymph due to gravity. Okay. And basically, these vessels will come together. They will flow through lymph nodes as the lymph is being brought toward the heart. Okay, and eventually, lymph is emptied into very large veins. So we're going to take a look at that in a bit. We're going to find lymphatic capillaries everywhere. Everywhere you have blood vessels, you have lymphatic capillaries, because wherever you have a blood vessel capillary, it's going to release fluid into that interstitial space, so you're going to need a lymphatic capillary to help reabsorb a little bit of that extra fluid. So you find it everywhere except for places where you have no blood vessels. So a typical place that you would not have a blood vessel would be something like cartilage. Cartilage is avascular, so you also do not have lymphatic capillaries there either. Right? It's meant to collect fluid. So you have what are known as these anchoring filaments. And let's see, can you see these little kind of black squiggly lines attached to the walls of that lymphatic capillary? So basically, as fluid is in this interstitial space and it's pushing in, those anchoring filaments are doing that. They're anchoring the capillary in space, so it doesn't just simply kind of completely like fold in on itself due to the pressure of that interstitial fluid. And if you also take a look at this image, let's see, where's my cursor? At this image, you'll notice that the actual cells of the lymphatic capillary they overlap, and basically the way they overlap allows fluid in, right? So if there's a lot of pressure out here, it'll basically push sort of the entryway open. But if there's a lot of fluid in the actual lymphatic capillary, it'll push back out and close the valve. So fluid can only go in one direction. It can only come in, can't go out. Okay, it's basically a one-way valve. All right, so let's take another look at our lymph nodes and trunks. So we have a few lymph trunks. So basically we go from these lymphatic capillaries. Okay, let's see, we're going to take a look at these lymphatic trunks, but quickly I just want to review with you this flow through the lymphatic system. So we go from that interstitial space, right? Interstitial space through the lymphatic capillaries. And these are all lymphatic, I'm just writing the words. Through lymphatic veins, And then these will filter through lymph nodes, then into what are known as lymph trunks. And then what we're going to see is they're going to basically, we'll see this in a second, but they're going to empty here and right here, basically at the conjunction of the jugular vein and the subclavian vein. So right where those two come together, that's where they empty into. Okay. So there's 5 major lymphatic trunks. There are the lumbar trunks, the intestinal trunks, the bronchomediastinal trunks, subclavian, and jugular ones. And sorry, I thought I had little circles coming here. So let's just take a quick look at these. The lumbar trunks are so-called lumbar, simply because they're in that lumbar vertebra area. So not surprisingly, these are receiving lymph from your lower limbs. Then the next one that we see are going to be the intestinal trunks. So you can see the intestinal trunk right down in the same area, bringing lymph from the actual intestine. So that'll, again, kind of have that fatty kind of fluid with it. And that fluid is called chyle. So they don't call it lymph, they call it chyle. We'll see that what the difference is in a second. We have the bronchiomediastinal trunk. So you can see the bronchiomediastinal trunk left, right bronchiomediastinal trunk right. These are simply collecting lymph from this thoracic organ. So any of these are all filtering into that bronchiomediastinal trunk. So broncho meaning like bronchioles, like lungs, and then that mediastinum, remember that's where the heart sits. Subclavian trunks, right, are simply by the subclavian arteries and veins, and then the jugular trunks simply coming down from the jugular area, from the neck area. Okay. So the difference between this lymph versus chyle, essentially it's the same thing. Chyle is simply lymph from the small intestines, and it, again, because all the fat that's in it, it ends up having more of a creamy white color. I guess that's the best way I can think of it. It's more like a, I don't know, creamy white. Like think of like a paint, like a creamy white. So it's not quite that straw color, but more of a creamy white color. Anyway, so they decided to give it a different name because it had a higher fat content. So they call that fluid chyle versus lymph, but essentially it's the same thing. Okay. All right. So kind of already talked about this, right? We go from lymphatic capillaries into lymphatic veins, into lymph, filtering through lymph nodes, and eventually we go into those lymph trunks, which are bringing the lymph back toward the heart. As I mentioned to you before, that flow of lymph goes back to the heart, toward the heart, via the skeletal muscles, the milking action, right? Just your muscles contracting, as well as that respiratory pump. And actually, I'm going to stop that right now, and we'll just break this up into 2 shorter videos. So if you have any questions about that, please let me know. Okay? See you next time.